Since the 2016 election, Hillary Clinton has not moved on. Up next, we'll talk about a recent interview where she said she's open to challenging the results and demanding that she be made president. Stay tuned. She just can't let go. In an interview with NPR's Terry Gross, Hillary Clinton said she is open to challenging last year's election results, apparently with the aim of reversing them and making herself president. During the interview, Clinton acknowledged that America lacks a mechanism for throwing out a presidential election after the fact, but she pointed hopefully toward Kenya, where the Supreme Court recently ordered an election do-over due to fairness concerns. Kenya is the model. Mark Green is a former New York City public advocate, the founder of Shadowing Trump. It's an anti-Trump advocacy group. But I bet even Mark Green doesn't believe in overthrowing Democratic election results. Does he, Mark?
I think one president from Kenya is enough.
I didn't even see. It shows you how pure of heart I am. I didn't even think of that joke. But okay. But look, I mean, come on. I don't think Kenya is a deeply corrupt, beautiful place, nice people, but very corrupt. So it's kind of weird to point to Kenya. But why even bring? Look, I know she's mad. I know she thinks the Russians and Comey did it, whatever. But to even suggest that in an interview, that's not good for our democracy, is it?
By the way, I am reading Hillary's book, What Happened. I assume, have you read it yet?
I actually have. Someone sent it to me. It's on my kitchen counter.
Okay, the answer is no. Look, Hillary Clinton is at least two things. One, a very smart lawyer. And even a dumb lawyer understands the Constitution never anticipated this. There's no provision for a do-over. The only thing is impeachment of the president or the vice president, and we'll see about that. Second, she's a human being, and she's the only person in American history to, in combination, win the popular vote, lose the presidency, and have a foreign adversary put his thumb on the scale and perhaps tilt the election, according to all our intelligence agencies. I heard you kind of deny it, but until they give Tucker Carlson the proof, this is an anomaly.
Right, okay, so I want to relitigate that. But look, I mean, I just think the problem with talking that way, there are many problems, but one of them is it raises the expectations and the intensity of your own base to such a fever pitch that they become hard to deal. They become scary, actually. And I think that Democratic leaders have said so many irresponsible things in the past 9 months that the Democratic base is totally out of control. And I'll give you one piece of tape that will convince even you, Mark Green. This is Nancy Pelosi in a group full of so-called dreamers explaining how she's on their side. Look how they respond to her.
Yes, I am. You do not. You don't know what you're talking
about. That's a problem. And I hope that's not the future, don't you?
You're complaining Hillary and Pelosi, so let me put them together. I've never met a Democrat who thinks there's a plausible way to contest the 2016 election. And so the base isn't upset about, the base is upset about the result, but without a remedy. If you're worried about a base being upset, I'm a little concerned at mobs screaming, lock her up when Donald Trump is at a podium. That happened. That's real. And in terms of Nancy Pelosi and DACA, look, the public by 2-1 are in favor of making DACA a law. Donald Trump says he is. Paul Ryan says he is. It'll probably happen. 30 students apparently went there and were furious. I asked a dreamer colleague of mine why. Because Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer seem to be arguing for making it a law, which they want. And he said, look, they're furious and scared about being sent back to a country they've never been in. And at the same time,
they're unreasonable and entitled. They're not even U.S. citizens, and they're demanding of the highest-ranking Democrat in the House. They're screaming at her. It's like, you're not even entitled to vote. Like, what are you doing? You don't see that at all?
Wait a second. Entitled. They're allowed to speak. So they are engaged in a form of protest that you and I might not engage in. Of course, we've never been threatened with being kicked out of the country. Their argument, tactically, I don't buy it, is they don't want to be bargaining chips, that Pelosi and Schumer should demand a clean dream bill and not say, okay, we'll spend more on the wall. That's tactical.
Does it bother you? Hold on. Does it bother you? Does it bother you the attitude? Look, I'm pro-immigrant, but it just seems a little weird if you come to this country illegally and partake of all the fruits of it and get all the benefits, the federal and state benefits as they have, and then someone says, we're going to help keep you here. You'd be grateful. You'd say, thank you, America. I never hear that. Why is that? And shouldn't we be hearing that?
So America, based on the GOP, a majority of the GOP base, wants to kick them out. So when you say they came here illegally, of course, you and I know, maybe your audience does, they came here as infants. Of course, they didn't have a choice, which is what makes them sympathetic. Tucker, you may want there to be chaos on the left. I have to tell you, the numbers don't bear that out. Donald Trump is still at the lowest level of any president of this. There's a 10-point gap between Democrat, Republican, and the generic House vote, and the Russian scandal is breathing down their necks. So
the Democrats are united in hating Trump, but what actually does bother me, and I think would bother you, is the total collapse of support for the rule of law and freedom of speech on the left. There are poll after poll after poll showing that a huge percentage of people on the left don't believe that you have an unfettered right to say what you think. That doesn't bother you?
First, that's not true. I saw the poll in the New York Post.
It is true.
No, I saw the poll in the New York Post. A fifth of Republican students and Democratic students in that poll said violence was acceptable to shut up.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
That's terrible. I'm from the Bill Maher ACLU school. More speech is the answer to bad speech. You're upset about the rule of law because 30 scared, angry DACA kids are yelling, and they shouldn't be. And we have a president of the United States who gives Joe Arpaio a pardon after he's tortured people.
I'm worried about the rule of law because you have Democrats openly advocating for ignoring it, for giving illegal aliens the right to vote. You get arrested for hunting without a license, but it's totally cool to sneak in the country and use fake documents to work? Like what?
You and I know Dreamers didn't sneak into the country, right?
Their parents did, and they're getting citizenship too, as you know.
They didn't. We're not talking about giving the parents automatic citizenship.
Yes, we are.
In terms of the right to vote, they want the right to stay in the military. They want the right to finish college. Don't you agree? I mean, Donald Trump and Paul Ryan agree with that.
There are less than 1,000 in the military out of 800,000. I mean, this numbers are just... Anyway, we're out of time, I'm being told. We got to go. But first tonight, Hillary Clinton appears to be making a fashion statement by adopting the left's trendiest new accessory, a tinfoil hat. While taking questions at a tech conference in California today, Clinton dismissed the scandal over her private email server as a non-issue of zero importance.
My email account was turned into, the biggest scandal since Lord knows when. This was the biggest nothing burger ever. It was a mistake. I've said it was a mistake. And obviously, if I got to turn the clock back, I wouldn't have done it in the first place. But the way that it was used was very damaging.
It meant nothing. It was totally irrelevant, which does raise the question, if it didn't mean anything, why did it hurt her campaign so much? She had an explanation for that, too. She said because the right-wingers in the media, the Washington Post, the New York Times, wouldn't let it go.
I know you had Dean Baquet here from the New York Times yesterday, and they covered it like it was Pearl Harbor. And then in their endorsement of me, they said, this email thing, it's like a help desk issue. So it was always a hard issue to put to bed, but we put it to bed in July, and then it rose up again.
Okay, so the New York Times is biased against Democrats. A novel defense, you say? Oh, but it got weirder from there, a lot weirder. Hillary went on to deliver a narrative so complex we could barely follow it, but we did. She explained how Donald Trump and Russia teamed up to rob her of her rightful job as President of the United States.
How did they know what messages to deliver? Who told them? Who told them?
Yeah.
Who were they coordinating with or colluding with? There's all these stories about, guys over in Macedonia who are running these fake news sites. The Russians, in my opinion, and based on the intel and counter-intel people I've talked to, could not have known how best to weaponize that information unless they had been guided. And here's
guided by Americans.
Guided by Americans. Within 1 hour of the Access Hollywood tapes being leaked, within 1 hour, the Russians, let's say WikiLeaks, same thing, dumped the John Podesta emails.
Oh, the Russians, but not just the Russians, the guys in Macedonia. So here's what Hillary Clinton is asking you to believe. Her campaign had no message or economic agenda or really any idea what voters wanted in the last election. But that didn't matter, none of it. They were going to win anyway. It was guaranteed by God himself. Then, at the last minute, the Trump campaign, which had half the money Hillary had, almost no staff or institutional support from anybody, came up with the diabolical idea to reach out directly to the government of Vladimir Putin and his army of bloggers and hackers and request emergency help. Putin complied, of course, because Trump was his puppet, perhaps even a secret agent of the Kremlin working directly for him. What happened next is history, or as Hillary herself might put it, her story. Unnamed members of Trump's campaign asked Russia to hack the DNC and the personal Gmail account of Clinton's campaign chairman, John Podesta, having deduced this must be the best way to hurt her in the campaign. The emails they exposed found a cushy relationship between the media and the Democratic Party. They showed evidence the Democratic primary process was rigged in Clinton's favor. They exposed Wall Street speech transcripts Clinton wanted to keep secret. The Trump people imagined all of this would be enough to win, but not so. In fact, Hillary explained today the emails the Russian hacked were boring and contained nothing of note, nothing worth knowing. So to increase the potency of this scheme, the Trump campaign ordered Russia to manufacture something called fake news out of the emails and distribute them through their network of bogus news outlets, which, by the way, they have. You probably didn't know that. Now researchers at Stanford have actually discovered that the fake news Hillary refers to was seen by almost nobody and believed by even fewer people. But according to Hillary, it was enough in the end to bamboozle the sad and easily confused voters of Pennsylvania and Wisconsin into mistakenly voting for Donald Trump. And by the way, she feels sorry for them for doing that. According to Hillary, the Trump campaign was so intimately tied to the vast Russian propaganda apparatus that they dictated the release of John Podesta's emails down to the minute in order to achieve maximum effect. They were apparently successful in this, even though, according to Hillary, nothing bad was in the emails in the first place, and they should have had no effect at all. Is that diabolical enough for you? Now, keep in mind that Hillary confidently asserted all of this today while providing precisely no evidence that any of it ever happened. A conspiracy so vast, she doesn't need to prove it. Now, no matter how much you may dislike Hillary Clinton, and some of you may, it was a poignant performance to watch. You almost wanted to help her.